Welcome to the last session of the day. What's next for payments? Please welcome once more our moderator, Andrea Badiola Mateos, Chief Commercial Officer at Finance Magnates Group, who will introduce the panel. Andrea, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Dushka. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know it's pretty much the end of the day and everybody's tired, but I have jet lag, so no excuses, okay? Welcome to the panel on payments. I'm very excited about this one because I'm personally passionate about payments. We have two very knowledgeable speakers, and I know that you're going to get amazing insights from this one. So I'm briefly going to ask you to introduce yourselves because nobody can do it better than yourselves.
My name is Vasyl Boroviak. I'm a CTO of the Flash Payments company for about 5-ish years now. We do international money transfer. We service other financial institutions. And I was always working in different startups. And I'm just an IT guy, really.
Thanks, Vasyl. Sudip.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me here. My name is Sudip. So for more than a decade now, I've been in payments advisory and consulting, implementation, working with multiple financial institutions while globetrotting and working across Europe, Middle East, and of course, APAC. I'm part of Capgemini's financial practices, and within that, payments SME in their global COE. As a part of the job, of course, the regular work, also involved in multiple GTM activities, working with our vendor partners, crafting solutions for our customer's customer. One of the highlights, of course, is rather being an executive interviewer for our thought leadership piece, the World Payments Report, which every year gets published in the SIBOS. In fact, this year it is the 20th year, so look out for that when it comes out for some more interesting aspects. And thanks again.
Thank you both for introducing yourselves. I'm going to open up the conversation. I have to open it up with AI and AI Gen. I know, but you guys are paytech. We're talking payments, technology. I was moderating the leaders panel earlier in the morning, and this is one of the things that literally came out, like how is AI and Gen AI being applied to the payments industry in particular? What are your companies doing to include this into your operations, if you are?
We do use AI, of course. We started using it longer before the ChatGPT blew up. Unfortunately, we didn't market it back then, but now we have to because everyone is doing this. And we apply AI in many, many areas, mostly the compliance area. I'll give you 2 examples because, well, it's public knowledge, more or less, and there are numbers behind them. So in Australia, if you're a payments provider like us, you have to submit so-called suspicious matter report to the local government, to the AUSTRAC. And to find those suspicious matters, you have to have a more or less full-time crew or a person traversing all your transactions and looking for suspicious patterns. Now, we had a person doing that quite a few years, and then we hired an actual data scientist, not just a person who claims to be. He developed the algorithm which traverses the flow of our payments and finds those patterns, suspicious patterns. So the outcomes. First of all, the algorithm works twice better than a human. Second, previously the humans spent from 20 to 40 hours per week, and with this tool, they spend about an hour. So the improvement in labor cost is from 20 times or maybe 40 times fewer, 40 times less labor you need to invest. So this is more, it's like not hiring another person or hiring yet another person to do more important stuff. So, but to pull this trick off, you have to have an actual data scientist. If you have one, ask them what is clustering. And if they cannot answer, then maybe they're not really a scientist. We have to hire an actual scientist from like scientific degree about data, and then he was able to pull that off. So second example, we have to do, with our risk appetite, we have to do a lot of adverse media searches. And again, this is usually a manual labor, but it can be semi-automated, as we know. But with AI, it can be fully automated. So previously, there was a person who was sitting and 40 hours per week was spending literally on just Googling around and searching other places. Now, we created an AI. Well, it's a set of AI. Let's call it an AI pipeline, which does that instead of a human. Previously, and the human doesn't find as many stuff as AI again, so we found that the labor, again, dropped by, well, maybe 20, from 10 times to 20 times fewer hours people spend searching for adversity online. And you can do it with ChatGPT. You can ask ChatGPT, hey, can you please look at this page and tell me if it mentions that person in negative context, blah, blah, blah. It's quite easy to implement, and we have it for suspicious transactions, but now I'm thinking we have to scale it to do adversity check for literally every transaction. And I don't think any company in Australia or maybe globally is doing adversity check for literally every transaction they see.
I was going to add actually that it's a very good point. And also it prevents leakage of talent, because if you have the AI in-house, you just need the person to operate it and to oversee it, etc. Whereas if you only have the data scientist and you don't have a technology that runs it, if this person gets offered a job somewhere else, then you're left hanging dry, basically.
Correct. Yes, we keep him happy. Yeah.
Exactly. Sudip.
Yeah, so GI has been there for quite some time. AI has been there for quite some time. It's the new kid in the block, Gen AI, which has piqued the interest. And it's a good thing that people are playing around with that. What we do see, according to, let's say, some statistics from IBM's AI adoption, that 49% of the end users have already used that at a certain point of time, and 1/3 use it daily. Now, there are two main use cases which are coming out. One is, of course, the exceptions investigations, which Vasyl just elaborated. And another one is about the consumer experience. Of course, just touching upon, or rather adding to what Vasyl mentioned, we had a few days back the ISO 20022 happening in the payments world. So we are receiving more data than ever before. And with these investigations and compliance, this can be hastened through the Gen AI. Now, coming to the consumer experience part of that, what we do see is, for example, let's say one logs into any portal, any merchant portal, and they interact with that. Now, again, these merchant portals have been there before, or this kind of bots has been there before. But when they're interacting with that, the AI is able to process faster. From the historical understanding, it is able to give them more tailored solutions. And finally, when the customer is ready to make a payment, you just get a payment plugin there. Without leaving the interface of the GPT box or the ChatGPT box, you can actually make the payment through that plugin. It's kind of an omni experience that what we would be envisaging. And the payment providers, of course, just need to provide that payment plugin, wherein for the merchants, they can tailor the solutions as per the customer's preferences, make it dynamic pricing, adaptive pricing. And also they can go beyond just payments, provide them with financing options like the BNPLs, all from one chatbot experience. So this is an area where we do see upcoming use cases. But having said that, now don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer at the very initial stage, but our financial industry is heavily regulated. So we do need to talk about data, or rather our people, our context, and our unstructured data. You just can't pick about any large language models from the market. It has to be streamlined to meet all these criteria, and only then we can have a way forward.
You just mentioned regulation, and I was trying to find out within all the different aspects that you're mentioning that it's all true, and evolution in the finance industry, in the fintech industry, in payments industry is extremely fast, like literally changes from day to day. And currently we're in Australia. We have the Albanese government that is pushing for new policies to renew the infrastructure in the payments industry, and there is the NPP, etc. So how is that affecting the operations of your businesses being in Australia?
Okay, maybe I'll start. Yeah. So, yeah, the payment ecosystem in Australia is actually going through a kind of a huge transformation, and the Treasury's roadmap has laid down, mandated actually, for the larger banks to act upon their traditional banking rails. The two of the main important aspects, of course, is that the checks are going to be abolished, I think around 2030, and the other is about their bulk payment system is going to move into the NPP, which is the instant payment system in Australia. Now, whenever we are talking about any payment regulation, there are two things we need to think about. One is how to meet and how to exceed. When you talk about how to meet part of that, this has to do, it's more about compliance. Just for the financial institutions moving their payloads into this kind of instant payments system. We have already seen this kind of things happening in the other developing parts, like Netherlands has moved that back in 2012. It has been a slow and steady progress for them, wherein they moved everything from their bulk to the instant payment systems. In fact, Australia is trying to go that way, making NPP the platform of choice in the long run. Now, the larger banks, or most of the banks, do have the plumbing in place for this kind of instant payments. But if you have to think about giving the customer the end-to-end experience, one needs to unbundle the complete value chain of the payments here. And unless and until the behind the hood components are being nurtured or aligned to make seamless, you are only going to have one single point, which is, I don't know, fast and furious. So it has to be the, let's say, it's not only about B2C or C2, or rather an A2A. It has to be the complete B2B2C kind of or a lot of Bs, I know, the whole value chain that has to come across together. Now, this is something that can be made, that can be done. This is the what we talk about how to meet. Now, when we talk about how to exceed, for the financial institutions, this is also serves as a social purpose. One of the major use cases for BECS in Australia presently is that it is used for making payments to the vulnerable Australians, like that of the Centrelink payments. Now, when we are moving this kind of payments from the bulk system to the instant payment systems, we need to think about that there might be scams and fraudsters who will try to find gaps in the customer knowledge and use it to their advantage. So it is inherent that the whole ecosystem needs to work together, and we find that the transition happens safely. There is also, apart from scams and fraudsters, there is also the talk about the a kind of financial abuse in the design and the operations of the system. Now, when NPP initially came into the being, there were cases about abusive messages being sent in the payment message in $1 increment, something like, or 1 cent increment rather. Some messages like, I know where you are, I know how to get you. Now, most of the banks have provided checks and balances, so those kind of things do not happen. But when we are talking about these new regulations, it's not only a lift and shift from there. So today, if you ask me, is the BECS giving this kind of, or providing protection against this kind of financial abuse? The answer is no. But however, since we're talking about a kind of a scheme of choice in the future, we also need to talk about financial inclusivity. And that's where these kind of things needs to be accounted for. And many of the banks have to think about when they're talking about those overlay services like the pay tools and the pay IDs. So they cannot be manipulated by any of the abusers.
You touched on a lot of different points that I wanted us to discuss about. I'm going to let Vasyl reply to the question, but we have 12 minutes left, so I'm going to try to speed up a little bit and touch on some of what you just said now. Vasyl, do you want to add something to what Sudip said?
I don't know much about the whole market. I know a lot about us. And I know that Albanese government introducing introduced a draft law last year about these kind of payment regulations, and we could be affected. We are a payment service provider, and turns out we could be regulated by ASIC, as we currently know, but we might move to be regulated by APRA, which regulates banks in Australia. So, and there's kind of a, I don't know what to expect, but looks like it will be just an increase of our fees to end customers.
And we will need to keep a pulse on that. You touched on a lot of different interesting points like fraud and cybersecurity and alternative payments, but I'm just going to put it together and let's talk a little bit about fraud, risk, and cybersecurity, if we can put it all in one. It has been increasing. I mean, you see it probably more than anybody through the transactions that are happening on a daily basis, because you are the technology that is processing all of these transactions. Many of the guys here as brokers and technology providers, they have a view of it, but you have an overview of all of it. How do you see fraud is being managed, then what kind of technologies and developments are you creating and implementing in order to limit that, and how is also that related to cybersecurity? So I'll put it together. Vasyl.
That's a big topic. So it's, I would say there are two topics in here. One is how do we protect ourselves from all of that, and how do we protect the end customers? We don't deal with those end customers. We deal with financial organizations who have the end customers. It's something, not something we are out of our control. What we are trying to do, as soon as we see one of our customer, who's again financial institution, is doing too much fraud, we go and work with them. So we have to educate them how to properly set up their KYC system, how to improve it, see the patterns work together. And what I noticed is that if they respond, if they do those improvements, we negotiate, then we continue working with them. However, what I found is that all the crypto exchanges didn't want to do that. We have to offboard like dozens of crypto exchanges from our platform. There are only 3 or 4 of them left on the platform. Most of them don't have any frauds like whatsoever, which is a good sign. And those who have, they're collaborating so much, they are pushing and educated their end customers. However, we had a case recently when just somebody gave their login and password from whatever system, exchange system, to a third-party person overseas because they trusted them so much, and then the money has gone. This is nothing we can do about here.
Sudip.
Yeah, I mean, just to quote a number, the Australians have lost around 3 billion in 2022, according to a ACCC report in the scams and frauds. One of the main reasons being this app fraud, which is the authorized push payments that we know about. Now, the scammers are taking to their interest the evolving landscape, mostly the faster payments, because often the faster payments has resulted in faster frauds. They leave the jurisdiction within a matter of time, making it difficult to trace them, find and retrieve them. And other, of course, is Gen AI, wherein I'm sure nowadays you are getting more improved grammar and English from the scammers in the messages, which is difficult to detect with your naked eyes. Now, while we are at that, of course, there has been the banks here together. They have come together, try to do something called the Scam Watch. All the big 4 banks are part of the Scam Watch, wherein they have talked about confirmation of payee being one of them. They are also trying to put all the resources together in terms of data sharing and upgrading the technologies. In fact, in Capgemini, we do have cybersecurity COEs separately who work alongside us, helping the banks. But that's much the technology can do. There are things beyond technology which the regulation or the regulatory body is taking care of. It's about the liability shift. This is again taken something from the UK, wherein the banks are being asked to take the hit of the victim's money. So it's not the victim who will be paying at the end of the day, it is the bank who has to pay for the losses of the victim. This regulation might be come across in Australia also, this shift in liability. And again, many of the things, we do take in the good things from UK, right? So the PSD3 coming in UK, talking about more secured customer authentications and all these new things, but also flow into Australia in the coming days.
How does all of that sit with the fact that Australia as a market has not much competition when it comes to banks? There is a market landscape with 4 major banks, but there is a growing fintech hub. Like the moment I was researching a little bit more about the payments landscape in Australia, I saw that there is a bubbling startup hub that is growing and racing and is fighting for their place in this market. How does all of these sit together? The tighter regulation towards the banks with the real-time payments need, but also the risk of it and all the startups that are growing. Like, how do you see the Australian market evolving in the near future and how all the synergies work?
I have some data for you. So in our space, we are doing international money transfer, right? We noticed that in past 5 or 10 years, the number of the amount of money big banks do internationally, like receive or send, haven't changed. But this means that all the other international money transfer companies like us have captured that growing market, because the market grew by several billions over the 10 years, and banks don't get it anymore. We, as startups, benefit from that. And I thank Australian government for enabling all of this, because previously it was literally just the big 4 controlling the entire market. Although big 4 banks are doing nasty things to those startups. Let me tell you our story. So our CEO, he tried opening treasury accounts in big 4 banks. They were closed momentarily because we are a threat for them. We are a competitor. They say, oh, it's compliance, but everybody knows it's not compliance, it's just they're dealing with competition this way. And some banks personally debanked our CEO, put him on the blacklist, and do not allow doing his, like, I don't know, coffee payments. That's kind of a competition we have here. But with other banks who provide their infrastructure for startups like us, I don't see big 4 being growing in the payments market much. They do innovate with the NPP. They are one of the founders of it, and I thank them for that. But still, the competition here is quite unfair.
Thank you, Vasyl.
Yeah, I mean, in Australia, the competition and dominance has long been there, not only in the financial industry, but if you look at the other establishments or the other adjacent industries, it's also there. However, the good thing is that the whole financial value chain, which I was talking about in the first point, it's slowly getting untangled. And payment has become, the whole payment value chain has become so complex that one single party cannot hold the single data. Throw into this, I mean, so the moats are being challenged. And throw into this things like the open banking, wherein the data needs to be now shared. So though the bankings are trying to form their own coalition or dominance, they will need to transfer the power from the provider to the user. And then it is about the user's choice to select the most efficient option and provide authorization by consent. So yeah, of course, there will be changes, and we also see things like those Apple opening up their NFC payment and everything that is coming into the fray, which will enable even the other things coming and challenging the banks. In fact, if you look at that way, ANZ today is working with Worldline, Westpac is working with 10x, CBA is working with PayPaplane. So these banks have actually moved from an area of competition to co-optation to collaboration, and that will continue.
Yeah, I think we need to see it evolve further. I'm guessing that it's also going to be replicated what happened in Europe initially, although there was a bigger market and there was not that much fierce competition. There were still big banks, and then the payments landscape has evolved, and now it's very collaborative environment, I believe. We have a minute and a half, so we're going to wrap up with conclusions, and I'm going to ask you, what do you foresee for the Australian market and for the Pacific in general? And if you can drop a line also about cross-border payments and how these is going to be evolving within the region, that would be great. And then maybe we can have one question from the audience, if there is any.
I'd pass it to you.
Okay, sure. So I would say, if the top of my mind, of course, comes the cross-border payments, one of the most emerging themes, because nowadays we are not only seeing cross-border payments in this old self. The old world has taken, the old world, when I say, I'm talking about the Swift world. They are being challenged regularly, and we see newer payments, instant payments, cross-border instant payments coming into the picture. So it has moved from velocity to value kind of a intercept. That is one. And of course, programmability in the payment space. When you're talking about programmability, of course, there are a lot of things happening in and around in terms of the CBDCs and the stable coins. So that's another emerging theme, which, of course, Australia is still in a very nascent stage, and the Australian RBA is doing some kind of an exercise. In fact, we did with ANZ RBA for offline payments with RMIT. So those things will continue to evolve. And of course, open banking is something that will shape up. It is slow, but it's steady.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sudip. Conclusions?
With the cross-border payments, we are sending money overseas and from overseas, and we are trying to be fast and cheap. And we noticed that a lot of countries have implemented real-time payments, and I was quite surprised that Philippines did it the earliest in the APAC, as to my knowledge. Maybe not the earliest, but that's what I noticed. And I'm happy that Australia is now having the same. This means that the people, there's so much migration to Australia from the neighboring Asian countries. Now they can send these money from Australia to their country in real time. So it takes seconds these days to actually send money to Philippines. And I'm happy that this is a growing trend, although in heavy regulated markets like Hong Kong or Singapore, these payments, and especially Malaysia, these payments for some reason go either for hours and takes days in Malaysia. So I root for them to implement real-time payments domestically, so that would enable cross-border real-time payments.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both so much. Let's try to see if there is one question from the audience. There is one over there. Yeah, they will give you a microphone.
Hey guys, my name's Sam from Airwallets within the payments team. Great discussion here. I've got a quick question on fraud. So what we're seeing in the payments industry is fraud and carding attacks become more prevalent. You know, it's not your traditional... Can you hear me? No. Okay.
I don't hear you, sorry.
Okay, the question's about fraud and carding attacks. So the likelihood of people buying people's data online and then using that data to, you know, do hundreds of thousand transactions on a merchant. Now, with the APRA guidelines of chargebacks being, you know, it has to be below 1%, what's your thoughts on APRA increasing this 1% guideline because it's becoming more prevalent in market? It's becoming more prevalent on everyday merchants.
Thank you.
I am not knowledgeable about that because I'm an IT guy.
Fair enough.
Sudip.
If I hear you correctly, you're asking about the APRA asking about chargebacks in terms of the frauds and scams. Is that?
Yeah, that's correct.
So this again relates back to the liability shift. So this is again not something very specific to Australia. We have seen something happening in Europe also, as I said, in PSD3. However, there still lies a lot of asymmetry, let's put it this way, in the terms of how the messages will be sent across or how the things will be taken up. There are bigger companies with deeper pockets who would be able to absorb this, but there are certain other companies who might face the impact. So this should be an ongoing discussion, and of course, just like UK, we might also expect some kind of a good pushback in terms of this liability because, of course, the companies must do more and more to stop the fraud and scams. But how can you actually stop someone from being gullible? I don't know.
Well, it's even harder when it's a carding attack, right? So there's a bot behind it smashing, thousands of transactions in the space of 10 minutes. It's hard for a merchant to pick that up at midnight, and put a block on the gateway versus in the daytime.
And then it messes up your whole presentation.
And then you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars missing, right? And then all of a sudden you go into a guideline from APRA saying, hey, you've got to fix your chargeback issue, but I'm trying to, but I can't because it's sort of an issue in the market, or the industry, I should say.
We have excessive automation for that kind of stuff. We stop flows to and from a particular person or company. If it happens, there are certain thresholds, and they are customizable per country, per direction, basically. So we would notice that. I'm not sure about other companies, but I do welcome this increase in fees, or how it's called. In case, sorry?
The percentage, yeah.
Yeah, I do welcome that because we don't have that many issues yet, and that means that there will be a better competitor space for us, to my opinion.
Yep. I hope that answers the question. Thank you, everyone. We don't have time for more questions, but if you want to grab them now as they walk out, feel free to do so. Big round of applause for our speakers. Thank you for joining us.